What is up, and welcome back to the Inside the Rink podcast, episode 69. Tonight, we're going to be talking about a couple extensions and pretty much going to be breaking down the rest of or half the league from the week that was. And first, let me welcome in my co host, Conrad. Conrad, we got a 2 foot blizzard that just hit us. I'm home from work today because everything's shut down. What's going on with you?
Well, it's been just really cold down here, or up here, I should say, because a little more north and whatnot. Freezing temperatures. There was a couple of days where it felt like minus 52, I believe it was, and a consistent minus 40 feels like with a wind chill. So it's like I said, it's been pretty cold. We did not get hit with a blizzard at the same time, thankfully, but now it's starting to settle down. It's getting a little bit warmer. It's supposed to be into like -9 temperatures next week. I'm looking forward to that because that wasn't a fun few days stretch.
Yeah, from what I saw, so I saw something this morning on Twitter that's like, oh, all of a sudden the snowstorm's stopping, and you're gonna get hit with another one next week, just so you're ready. Cool, cool. So can't wait for that. We didn't have any trades this last week. We had a couple minor ones involving some AHL players, but nothing NHL standard to pop off to. But we did have some extensions. The first one is the Buffalo Sabres extended Josh Doan to a 7-year, $48.65 million extension. The Capitals extended Bogdan Triniev to a 2-year, $1.8 million extension. And just probably, I'd say maybe 30 minutes ago, it came through. The Kings extended Taylor Ward to a 2-year, $1.75 million extension. Some pretty good deals there and some money coming out. The Triniev one seems like it's a two-way deal this year, and next year it becomes a one-way deal. So, what sticks out to you to these deals?
Obviously, out of all three of them, two of them being it looks like minor league deals, kind of keeping your depth guys intact. It's Josh Doan to me because the Caps going up, Jarmo Kekalainen being the new GM in Buffalo, he's getting his pieces together, Chris. He's one of those guys. He's not afraid to make a move. Doan and his agent, they get a pretty good deal. Chris, I don't know about you. That's a pretty fair deal for the team. It could also kind of age a little bit. It could age really well for the Sabres, and Doan could be due for a huge pay raise in his next deal, but that remains to be seen.
Yeah, Doan's a name we talked about when he got moved. Number one, when he got moved from Utah to Buffalo. Also, we talked about him when they made the changes in the front office that they did. Another name that just fit right in. So it's great to see him extended. The fact that he's going to stay in Buffalo for the next 7 years. And his career's taken a major turn since getting to Buffalo. And that's a team right now sitting in a playoff spot, which we'll talk about in a couple minutes. So to me, I really love that deal. Ward also covering a little bit of the Kings here and there has been a nice piece that they've called up and been able to rely upon with the injuries that they've sustained throughout this season. So the Triniev one, little surprising to me. But again, that's a two-way deal this year and a one-way deal next year. Maybe that's something where they're trying to figure out the lineup where we talked about Ovechkin maybe not being there, but we'll have to see how they piece all that together. But moving right along, the week that was, since we really don't have any news. Last week, or in the past couple of weeks, the Detroit Red Wings, a team you saw on Saturday and a team that I follow very well, five straight games with a point. They're currently sitting in first place in the Atlantic Division, and they got some tough news today. They're going to be without their top defenseman, one of their top defensemen, in Simone Edvinsson, who will be out until the Olympic break with a lower body injury. This is going to be a tough week for them. They got 5 games left until the break, and it seems like he will be back on the first game after the break, is what it sounded like today from Todd McClellan. The big test this Saturday they got is Colorado at 1 o'clock. What did you see from them this weekend?
So this weekend, I saw a team that's fast. They have a lot of veteran pieces there, as you know quite well, Chris. One of the things that Detroit does well is they push, they press teams, and they're fast off the rush, and they will catch you lacking if you don't have your head on a swivel. I saw a lot of flip the puck up. The defenseman has to look up to try and track the puck, and there's already 3 attackers in the offensive zone. Detroit is really good at playing that quick game. They're really strong when it comes to creating chaos in front of the net, and they score a lot of goals because of it. They scored, I believe it was 3 of the goals just right in front of Connor Hellebuck Saturday night. And one of the biggest things they do is they attack, and they attack until the whistle is blown. So they're a really good team, and there's a reason they're first in the Atlantic, Chris.
And a lot of that is, I think, partially, like you said, the veteran leadership they have there, but they finally have a number one goalie. John Gibson, a lot of people could not stand him when the season started and wanted him gone, and they wanted Kosa. I myself may have mentioned it once, if not twice, on this podcast, but now he's just turned into himself. And I said it, I believe, when I made an appearance on our one of our other podcasts, The Benders, on a post game where I said I think we're gonna all you Gibson's a streaky goalie, and he once he hits that streak though, he can be one of the best goalies. And you're seeing it now. This is his second, I believe, his second stretch of 8 straight wins. And their only loss last week was an overtime loss in which Cam Talbot was in net because they were playing a back to back. He's turned into one of the top goalies. Honestly, I think he should be a part of the Vesna conversation, at least right now. I mean, this team it probably is not in first place without John Gibson being the goalie that he is this season. Hopefully, again, I say this every time we bring up the Red Wings, we're not to March yet. And that's when they seem to have their collapse. That's what makes me nervous. Also, February, they do not have a single home game. I know it's only, 4 or 5 games in the month, but no home games that month. It's a little tough stretch, and they got some good teams obviously coming up. So they'll be interesting to watch over the next couple weeks. I'm glad they won Saturday because I thought for sure my phone was going to blow up if they lost. And another team that's red hot, the Buffalo Sabres. And I feel like we keep talking about them and they're not going away. And maybe we're done with this curse thing because every time we talk about a team, they seem to just not turn, they seem to stay the course they're on. Like Tampa's done it 3 or 4 times trying to curse them. But Buffalo has points in 6 of their last 7 games. They have 3 straight wins. They're currently sitting in third place in the Atlantic Division as of recording. Is this team really going to snap the drought and head back to the playoffs?
It's certainly looking like Buffalo's headed to the playoffs. I get a little nervous watching this team given the stretch that they've been on year after year. This is a playoff drought that it's what 13, 14 seasons long now. It's one of the longest, I believe, actively, and it's also one of the harshest in professional sports. Buffalo being a team that has a rich history, they've just look at some of the guys that they've had on their roster, Chris. They've had Sam Reinhart, Ryan O'Reilly, Jack Eichel, a lot of really good names that they've traded off and have found success elsewhere. Buffalo being a team now that has built a core, kind of moved the things around. Last year, even, we saw the Dylan Cousins move. I look at Buffalo. I like what they're doing. I like the move that they made this year to be bold and bring in a guy like Josh Doan. Sure, they had to give up JJ Paterka, who's soaring in Utah, but look at Buffalo as an entire team, top to bottom. It doesn't seem like there's flaws, but they need consistency in net if they want to go deep in playoffs. And I say it, I feel like I say this every week, Chris. Goaltending is voodoo, and maybe they find consistency at the right time from the right guy. That's going to remain to be seen. Buffalo, like I said, great young team right now.
Yeah, right now in net, ride the hot hand of Alex Lyon. One name also offensively, looking at their stats, they have 6 players to this point in the season that have 30 points. And one name quietly having a solid season outside of Josh Doan is Jack Quinn, who has 30 points this season in 51 games on 11 goals and 19 assists. And, for the firepower the Sabres have in, Tage Thompson, Alex Tuck, Doan, Rasmus Dahlin, you don't hear much about Quinn. And so the season he's having is great to see. Obviously, we mentioned it when they made the moves they did earlier. And, the team started to turn things around. And right away, we mentioned it that, are these guys starting to play that they want to stay in Buffalo? They want to be a part of that core. And I think that's what you're seeing right now. We've talked about one thing to watch though with this team is they have three goalies right now. Now that Lyon is back in the lineup, could this possibly open the door to maybe they move a goalie and they go add more scoring in some sort, or maybe even some help on the blue line? But I don't know. What are your thoughts? What else could they do? Maybe.
I don't think they have a need for adding to their blue line because they have Samuelson, Deline, Power, and Byram. Those are four really good guys to have defensively. Now they have a lot of talent on the left side, so maybe they do end up moving a guy to acquire another guy for your right side on defense, or maybe they shore up some depth. Goaltending, as I was kind of alluding to there, Chris, that's kind of one of the issues that I look at for a lot of teams. It's a buyer, like, you got to go with what the price was. You and I had saw what San Jose, what they paid for Laurent Brossoit, but ultimately that remains whatever Buffalo's looking for. They'll make the move that they feel best suits them. And I'm emphasizing again, Jarmo Kekalainen will make big moves if it's the right fit he feels. But kind of getting back to the Jack Quinn thing, you kind of sparked a thought of me because when Jack Quinn, when he came into the organization in Buffalo, sure, it was a little bit rocky to start. Once he got his footing, he's looked exceptional. He's looked like the player that they brought him in to be, and it's a confidence thing with Jack Quinn. When he has the puck, you kind of see it when he's skating up the ice. He has the puck on his stick. He doesn't look like he's hoping to make the right play. He's got that confidence when he carries the puck. The zone entries are clean, and he's adding value to his line, not being another placeholder. It feels like, Chris.
I mean, absolutely, and he looks good there, and seems like you said, a perfect fit. Now, a team like we talked about, maybe potentially Buffalo making some moves. Another team that's been heavily rumored in making moves, the Boston Bruins. They had their win streak snapped, but they've won 8 of their last 9. They're facing the New York Rangers tonight, who just a couple weeks ago they beat 10-2 on Saturday in front of everybody on national television. This Bruins team just keeps hanging around, and honestly, I think we ask this every time: are they a playoff team?
I'm still not sold on them, but they're playing like they are. So I look at this point of the season. If Boston makes the playoffs, maybe it shows that last year they pulled the trigger at the right time and it was more of a maybe it was just a deeper retool kind of needed to their roster. There's a lot of holes that they would need to fill if they want to try to go on a run, but Chris, they are looking like a team that could do some damage and make some noise. There's a lot of teams to get through, Tampa Bay being one of them that you and I talk in depth of a lot, but Boston could be one of those teams that makes some noise in the playoff.
Yeah, I'm trying to pull it up right now, but I'm pretty sure I heard something about Fraser Minton, and maybe producer Connor can help me out here. But I'm pretty sure he's atop the league lead in goals scored for rookies. I think that's what I heard. I don't know if he's
I'm
there.
not
He's
100%
a
certain.
couple players down. You've got Beckett Seneke, who's at 18, and then it goes down from there. Oliver Kapanen in Montreal at 16, Matthew Schaefer at 13, and Fraser Minton at 13.
Okay, so maybe it was something else. I heard he was towards the top end, but I mean that's another piece in a great deal acquisition they made with the Brandon Carlo trade last year. That you're seeing him produce, in their bottom 6, and they're an interesting team. They've had some injuries this season, but they just keep coming. And I said it before we came live, and they're starting Jonas Corposalo again tonight again and against the Rangers, and he's a goalie that seems to just have found a hot stretch as of late. I believe he had a shutout the other night. Um, maybe I'm missing a night, but he's looked good in some of his last starts. Swayman's looked good this year. They're interesting to look at, and I'm wondering what could they be making a move for. Obviously, there's been some rumors out there now with Dougie Hamilton after the Anderson deal fell through. Maybe they bring Dougie Hamilton back into the fold. but they're certainly a team to watch over the next couple weeks. And another team in that division is the Maple Leafs, who were in a playoff spot, I believe, last week, if not 2 weeks ago, when we talked about them and their stretch. They've lost 4 straight games. And maybe this is them starting to fizzle out. It could also, my question that I was wondering when I looked at their recent schedule is this they're feeling the loss of William Nylander, who's been out with an injury?
It certainly feels like Toronto's feeling that after effect of they don't have William Nylander anymore, and a lot of stuff has kind of not gone right for them. They're losing crucial points like every game they play. It feels like 4-4-2 in your last 10 games, and I believe they're on a 4-game losing streak right now.
Yep.
So just not a great stretch of hockey for the Leafs heading into the Olympic break. 5 points out of a wild card spot. Maybe something changes in Toronto if they make or miss the playoffs, pardon me, but I don't see them being a realistic threat if they do get into the playoffs.
Yeah, I don't either. And one thing I'm starting to, as I'm looking through their schedule as of late, and they got Anthony Stolarz back on Friday. He got his start against the Vegas Golden Knights, and they lost 6-3 in that game. And we talk about this team in goaltending. They have Joseph Wall and Stolarz, but Dennis Hildeby has come on and had a nice season for them. And all of a sudden, he's kind of the odd man out because of what they have. And it's kind of, in a way, messed with them a little bit, is what I've looked at. And maybe that's a missing piece to this team where they need goaltending, and Hildeby could be the guy. And that could be what has flipped the whole momentum for them. But I don't really know. I think the Atlantic Division we talk about all the time is just so wide open outside of, I think, Tampa and maybe Detroit. I would say yes on Detroit, but I mean, it's so wide open where 2, 3 of those teams are going to keep fighting for 2, 3 spots in the playoffs.
Yeah, and you kind of hit the nail on the head with the goaltending there. And my opinion on it, Chris, is Toronto needs to run 3 goaltenders right now because Hildeby has his confidence, and you've seen it time and time again. Woll and Stolarz, they're frequently hurt. It feels like over the last few years. I know there is stuff where it's kind of unavoidable given the contact and the situations. So having a good number 3 you can rely on when it comes to playoffs, if Toronto does get there, maybe Hildeby steals the show and Toronto goes on quite the run. That is something like you and I will probably end up watching closely if it does materialize. But until then, give Hildeby another 7 or 8 games split between him and Stolarz on the backup role. And if you're comfortable giving Woll the starter role, let him finish the majority of the games, or even do a 50-50 split to remain to finish out the year. And whoever's the backup or considered the backup splits half of those games with Hildeby, and they go off of who's performing better. And maybe Toronto makes a move in net.
Yeah, I think the tough part is now Hildeby was hot, and he sat out the last 4 games in well over a week now, and so that momentum might be gone. But there is a goalie who is red hot and has been all season setting records. We talk about him almost every other week, maybe every week now. I wrote an article the other day, an opinion piece about him winning the Vezina, and that's Brandon Bussi and the Carolina Hurricanes. This team just does not lose. And watching, I don't know if you saw the video. There was a video of Bussy after where he was like just a kid in a candy shop when he did an interview, and they told him after he could keep the towel and how happy he was. He had to keep the towel. Like that's what you like to see, and just players having fun. Bussy, a guy that signed a contract with Florida in the offseason, was in the Bruins system, and then the Panthers put him through waivers. Carolina claimed him, and now they've had him as their third goalie, kind of like a Hildeby situation for Toronto. And they suffered injuries with Anderson and Kochetkov, and Bussy got his chance, and he's been running with it. And now he's, in my opinion, the starting goalie on one of the top 2 teams, maybe even I would say the top team in the Eastern Conference. And Andrei Svechnikov's not cooling down. He's continuously putting up points almost every night. This team and I say this every single week, is such a scary team this year, and they are so fun to watch. I don't know if you agree with me, but that's my opinion on them.
My opinion on that is, well, I certainly agree with you because similar to Detroit, Carolina is fast and they will burn you if you are caught kind of snoozing. They were one of the teams as they don't play the same kind of chase up and defensemen have to look up and hopefully they're not getting bowled over by another guy. But Carolina is they pass the puck well, they connect their passes, and the way they like it's a weird way to describe it, but their zone entries are just they're so smooth, Chris. I watched the way that they kind of control that style of play, and whether it's a guy just pounding through defensemen or they just make a really nice pass up the ice and Svechnikov's racing in out of nowhere and he catches guys kind of sleeping. They're a really good team when it comes to making those plays. We had talked about previously that the physicality might not be there, but maybe that's something they don't have to worry about. So pardon me, Carolina in this stage of the season, given all of the speed they have in their lineup, the Ehlers addition has been huge. Maybe they go and they look to add just another young, fast forward that will contribute. And you and I had saw in the offseason with the extensions they made to their current roster, this feels like it's now or never. And they have those first round picks from that Rantanen trade that they could toy with this year. So they're a very scary team. And add Bussy into the mix. So much to like about Carolina.
And they're a team kind of like Tampa Bay, where we talk about the Lightning having injuries on the blue line, and they're able to put pieces in, and it's continued. And the Hurricanes are doing the same thing. I mean, they lost certain pieces of their blue line throughout the season, and they've had Nikishin and Nystrom come in, and they become a solid pair on the back end. And we talked about this, I think, when Philip Deneau came up, and I mentioned Kotaniemi was a name that they were throwing out there to try to move and get Deneau. Maybe that's a name along with those picks that they dangle out there to try to get some more scoring. But this team is fun to watch. Taylor Hall scored a goal. I believe it was last night. Or, yeah, what's today? 25th. It was on the 23rd, which was 1 year to the day of him being traded to the Hurricanes in that deal that had Rantanen going to Carolina and the whole Colorado and Chicago three-way deal. So Carolina is a fun team to watch, scary team to watch. They faced the Red Wings twice now. They're going to face them again the end of February, hopefully, based on what McClellan said. Edvinsson will be back. They're going to need a full lineup because that's going to be a potential Eastern Conference Finals matchup, maybe. And maybe when they face the Lightning, it is too. I mean, the Lightning, Red Wings, Hurricanes, those three teams, to me, right now, the way they're playing, are a lot of fun, could make a very deep run this season. A team right now who is just gelling on the road is the Pittsburgh Penguins, who just finished a 4-game road trip, and they swept all 4 games. They're coming back home. Every week, this team, I feel like we talk about them flip-flopping. 1 week, they're hot. 1 week, they're not. 1 week, they're in. 1 week, they're not. Right now, they're in. Has our opinion of this team changed at all?
I'm so skeptical of Pittsburgh right now, given what you just said. 1 week they're in, 1 week they're not, 1 week they're hot, 1 week they're not. Chris, I look at their roster and I want to believe that they're going to hold where they are. But I also take a look at the wild card. Like New Jersey could do something. Maybe they shake something up. Maybe Philadelphia hits a hot streak. There's so many possibilities, but right now, in their current situation, my opinion's kind of swayed given they're second in the Metropolitan. But take a look down everything. Like I said, sure, these teams are 6 points out, 7 points out. There are better teams on paper that are sitting outside of the playoffs because they aren't able to recover from from bad losing stretches or not being able to string together wins. And at this stage of the season, with about 30 games left, roughly for each team, it's now or never. Like, time is running out, and these teams, if they're going to try to salvage any point of their season, maybe we're going to see some more movement, because teams like New Jersey want to stay in a playoff spot and not have a year where they're missing. Because New Jersey's a good team, Pittsburgh's a really good team, but compare these two teams in the playoff spot and pictures that they've been in. Pittsburgh's supposed to be in a kind of retool rebuild phase.
Pittsburgh's kind of created a little breathing room between them and everybody behind them in the Metro. But to me, Pittsburgh, they're starting to turn me around to they are a playoff team. My issue with them, though, is they get to the playoffs. What are they going to do? Is it going to be Seelovs? Is it going to be Skinner? And if it's Skinner, it makes me hesitant because we've seen him kind of get to those moments of not being able to perform. And I don't. He dealt with it against Florida. Maybe it's an Eastern Conference thing because they get to the Stanley Cup Finals the last 2 years with him in net. Maybe that he struggles in the first round. It all depends on who they face, I think. But Pittsburgh is very interesting to me. They've also another team that has dealt with a lot of injuries this season. Malkin's missed some time. Intriguing to see what they're going to do moving forward, like piece-wise, whether they're going to make some deals. They did get Chernakov. He's fit in well there. Skinner has had his moments fitting in well there. Seelovs, to me, has been a great goalie for them this year. So Pittsburgh's very intriguing to me. A team that they just passed, and to get into second place in the Metro, the New York Islanders are kind of trending the wrong way right now. They've lost 4 of their last 6. They've been outscored 21-11 in that time frame. You mentioned the Devils. Are the Islanders going to fall out of this?
And with the Islanders and the Devils, it's only a 3-point gap, where I mentioned Devils in Pittsburgh earlier. That's a 7-point gap right now. Whereas 3 points is a little bit more feasible when it comes to trying to chase a team down for a playoff spot. I also emphasize that teams who are hot and who they're and if they're not, every game matters right now, and you're starting to see how the final standings are projected. They're basically going to shape up and look fairly similar to where they are right now. Sure, there might be some movement, the wild card spots and all that, and some teams might decide to wave the white flag given where they are. It feels like the Rangers have done that, and I'm not saying the Islanders are going to do that, because the Islanders are in a very unique situation after getting the first overall pick, and they're now in a spot where they are competing for one of the 3 divisional spots and not in a wild card spot. So do we see them in a playoff spot? You mentioned them trending in the wrong direction. They're a good team when things are clicking, and they need to find how things click and make it go from one game to the next, because it's very inconsistent how they're going one game, playing a full 60 minutes, and the next game they kind of get beat up. They can come back and score 3 really quick goals and still lose the game.
And they just got Bo Horvat back, and between Wednesday and Saturday, their last 2 games, they've only scored 1 goal. And we mentioned the Devils going into the Islanders conversation. There's a team sitting outside of it that I didn't put on the list, but maybe we should talk about them. They're having a tough stretch as well. But the Washington Capitals, I mean, they're struggling a little bit right now. Could they be a team? I mean, who wouldn't love to see a Ovechkin-Crosby first-round playoff battle? They might have to make some moves to get a little bit better. They're dealing with their injuries on their end as well, but don't rule out the Capitals.
Yeah. And speaking of, like, just going on the Capitals, one little quick thought there is the ticket sales that would do, like, because the NHL would probably, if the marketing was there and they went with it, they would probably bill that as Crosby versus Ovechkin for the final time in playoffs, or whatever their heading would be, because that's probably the last time they would meet in the playoffs.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, no matter what, if you're in marketing in any way, shape, or form, that is 100% how you title that. Another team, this team was, we talked about as the best team in hockey, hands down. The Colorado Avalanche, they're having a little rough stretch here. They've dropped 4 of their last 6. Are we starting to see maybe how this team could be beat in the playoffs? Are they getting exposed a little bit?
Maybe. And I'm so hesitant when it comes to Colorado because they have a plus 76 goal differential right now. And when things go their way, they are not the team you are beating. But I also look at this little stretch they have, and maybe it's a blip, maybe it's the adversity they need to face. Between regulation and overtime, they've only lost 15 times, Chris. 35 and 15 when you combine regulation and overtime losses or shootout losses too. They're beatable, but it's a very tall task for any team right now. So Colorado in the situation they are, and you mentioned it being a rough stretch, and I get where you're going with that, but when Colorado's another really fast and good team, they also have that veteran experience in the playoffs. They've gone through the trenches as a team together. They've won the Stanley Cup in recent, like the last 5 years. Chris, I don't know if a team goes into the playoffs and can match up with a team that has that firepower, the depth in net. They have arguably 2 guys who could step up as a starter if called upon. And up front, it's kind of scary looking at what they have. Kngihts, McKinnon, Landeskog, who came back, and sure, he's out right now, but they have a lot. And Brock Nelson is also he's coming into his own in Colorado. They're a very, very good team when things are going their way. But when it's not going the way that it should, Colorado, they seem a little more human. They don't seem like a powerhouse.
Yeah, that's my takeaway from right now is they don't look like the dominant team we thought they were as of right now. I mean, in their last 4 games other than last night, they had given up 7 goals in 2 of those. They lost 7-3 to the Predators, and they lost. It seems like Friday because the Friday the 16th they lost to the Predators 7-3. Friday the 23rd, the week after, they lost 7-3 to the Flyers. Just ironically, yeah. They came back out. They won last night against Toronto in a 4-1 win. And
Yeah.
I look at that and I go, okay, we just talked about Toronto and they're going the wrong way. So was it they ran into a team going the wrong way, and they figured out maybe they figured it out? This is to me is a real big week for the Avalanche. They got the Senators they're on the road for I believe 3 of them. They got the Senators on the road, Montreal on the road, and Detroit on the road. 2 of those
Chris,
aren't easy.
you kind of took the words out of my mouth there, but that Philadelphia game was the wake-up call that Colorado needed because they weren't playing full, complete games like they had been prior to that. If I'm any of these teams coming up, because that was an embarrassing loss for the Colorado Avalanche, a 7-3 loss to the Philadelphia Flyers. Philadelphia clicked. They played their best game of the season, arguably, and Colorado, hands down, played their worst of the season. So are we going to see Colorado put up a big game upcoming? We're going to see how that unfolds, but they're one of those teams. And you mentioned the stretch coming up. There's a lot of tests to see if they are slipping right now or if that was just a game where they just needed to be exposed.
Yeah, and the other thing I'm looking at is I'm glad Mackenzie Blackwood, the 2 games where they lost 7-3, Mackenzie Blackwood was the goalie in both of those. Those were his last 2 starts before last night. And he allowed 5 goals to Nashville and 6 to Philly. And then he came back last night against the Maple Leafs to start this 4-game road trip, and he only gave up 1. So again, I look at that going, okay, we talked about Toronto, tough team, but is that exactly what he needed to get his mind right and back into, as you say, the voodoo? Turn the voodoo around. He's back out of his head, and he's on a different path. Do you give him the game against Ottawa before you go back and switch, we'll have to see. They do have the Red Wings back to back, so they face them Saturday at 1 o'clock, and then they have the Red Wings at home on Monday night at 9 o'clock. So they do return home, and when they get home, it's Detroit and San Jose, and then they come back from the Olympic break with Utah on the road. So I guess the stretch doesn't get easier after Montreal and Detroit this week. So I mean, maybe they need the break, maybe they need the reset, and they come back out of the break and they're the powerhouse again, and that's exactly what they need to go back and run through the league like they were the first half of the season.
Yeah, and kind of takes it out of my mouth there again, but it's such a weird thing given that Colorado had been so dominant all year long, and now all the exposing is coming about. But maybe losing guys to injury is the unfortunate downfall that they might face. So, Chris, they got 32 games left in their season. I don't see them slipping out of first in the Central whatsoever.
Nope.
Nor do I see them kind of falling flat on their face in the playoffs like most of the President's Trophies winners do. They are a really strong team, and they're probably going to remain a really strong team throughout the whole playoffs.
I agree with you there. And maybe I wouldn't go as far as fall flat in their face. I think they could get through a first round, but I think that second round, we talked about it with Winnipeg last year too. I think that second round might be a bloodbath. And speaking of that second round and who it could be, I'm going to lump these two together because it kind of ties into one question. The Dallas Stars, first off, have hit a bit of a slump, kind of like Colorado. They've dropped 4 of their last 6. Right behind them is the Utah Mammoth, who are in a 9-game point streak. They have 5 straight wins. We talked for weeks that we thought Colorado, Minnesota, and Dallas were the top 3 in the Central Division, and there was no question. As of recording right now, Utah is 9 points behind the Dallas Stars for that 3rd spot in the Central. Could we see that flip?
It's not out of the question, but it's looking increasingly unlikely because you mentioned that it's 9 points right now that they're behind. So that's 4 games that they have to win and another that they have to take to overtime outside of regulation just to tie Dallas. They have 1 game in hand. So that game in hand you have to win it because then that narrows the gap to 7. And if Utah has 2 convincing wins and Dallas, say they face 2 tough opponents back-to-back and they lose back-to-back, then you narrow that gap down. But until that gap gets down to like 3 points, I think Utah's a lock for the first wildcard spot. I don't see them slipping out of it, and I don't see them getting into the 3rd because 9 points is very hard to come back from. And you look down the list of teams that are back like 8 or 9 points, it's a very hard stretch of games for everybody right now. Teams are dealing with injuries, fatigue, and kind of start getting ready to manage their guys going to the Olympics and whatnot. Chris, I'm going to say it just blatantly here. This is one of the most ruthless seasons for a lot of teams. There's been a lot of 4 and 6, 6 and 8. I have to just say, like, there's not a chance that people or teams can close that gap.
I'm looking at Utah's schedule, and they have the Stars 2 more times the rest of this season. I will make a bold statement. This week, they have 4 games. All 4 games are against tough teams. If they come away with 6 points, so let me clarify this. They're playing at Tampa Bay tonight. They have at Florida on Tuesday, and they're at Carolina on Thursday. And then on Saturday, they're at home against the Dallas Stars. 4 games, 8 points. If they get 6 points, and 2 of those 6 points have to come against the Stars, this team can catch the Stars.
Yeah.
Dallas has dealt with their injuries this season. I hate saying it because he was playing third line minutes. Losing Sagan has kind of changed this team a little bit. They haven't looked the same. I mean, they were in second. They were at one point we were talking about them maybe passing Colorado because they were 1, 2, 3 points right behind them. The Sagan injury happens at Madison Square Garden. He's out for the season, and this team is just trending in the wrong direction. Jamie Benn's been out for a certain amount of time. They have Mikko Rantanen, they have the superstar power, but Utah is coming on strong, and again, they're doing it out without Logan Cooley. So, and Cooley's expected to be back sometime after the Olympic break. That's a boost, not including the trade deadline and what they could go add. Vizmelka has been standing on his head. He's been one of the best goalies. I've mentioned him possibly for Vezina, and he leads the league, I believe, in wins for goalies. And Utah is very scary right now. And if I was Dallas, even though it's a 9-point lead, that can get erased pretty quickly. I mean, we saw the Blues come back from what was it last year and make a playoff spot. You could have said last year nobody should be worried about the Blues. They're not going to do it. They're not going to catch them, and they did. And now Utah could very well catch Dallas, especially with one game in hand. They come away with 6 out of 8 points, with two of those points coming against Dallas. If they come away with 7, and one of those is against Dallas, then even better chance. Utah's scary to me right now.
But St. Louis benefited off the coaching change they made. That you got to look at that. Is they rode the hot hand there, I guess you could say, with the coaching change. They turned things around and made the playoffs because of the coaching change. Like 2019, you bring in the new coach, and I'm not saying they're going to go and make another coaching change and go to the Stanley Cup final and win again, but Chris, they're a veteran team that relied on the coach to kind of lead a new voice, and they rallied around it. So you could say, sure, it's a scary gap, but 9 points at this point of the season, like, that's 5 games you have to win to pull ahead. You don't have another 4 games in hand unless you get into the schedule where you don't play for a few days and Dallas plays a 4-6 or a 6-8, 6-9, whatever it is. Maybe you do pull ahead. Maybe Utah does get to the point where, Chris, maybe they do end up closing that gap. But just take a look at their schedule. Then you have to start circling the must-win games. You have to start looking at where their opponents are, because every point matters at this point of the season anyways. With, like, if you want to chase that third in the Central, you have to start stringing together wins. It's like Buffalo and their winning streak. If they didn't go on that winning streak, they're not in a playoff spot right now. They got hot at the right time, and they're riding the momentum. They are still taking that and finding ways to stay in that 500 spot where they're winning. Maybe they'll drop a couple, and maybe they bounce back with another 5 wins. Utah, sure, they're a scary team, but they're 27-20-4 right now. Dallas is a really good team, and I feel like Dallas would recover enough in time. It would take probably a 7 or 8 game losing streak in my mind for them to slip into that wild card spot. I just don't see that happening.
I stand by. I think Utah, their schedule benefits them after this stretch. I think they come back from the Olympic break, and especially March, they have a lot of home games, whereas Dallas goes on the road against a lot of playoff teams. That, and I mean, 2 meetings between the two. If Utah comes away with 4 points, you've cut the gap almost in half already. Yeah. So that's why I said with that bold statement is, if they come away with 6 points this week, 2 of them have to come against Dallas. If they come away with 7 and that 1 point is against Dallas, then they can. I think they very well could, pass Dallas. But the way things stand right now, I agree. 9 points is hard to get to, especially with the schedule Utah has this week. It could, honestly, they could go the wrong way. They could fall out of everything just this week alone, and we're having a different conversation next week. But the way they're playing, we'll have to see. I mean, this could be a great conversation between us for the next continuous couple of weeks until the trade deadline to see where things stand between Utah and Dallas. Just watching the Stars games and watching the Mammoth game that I have, you know, they just seem like two teams kind of trending in the opposite direction right now. Again, it's a crazy game. All can change. We'll have to see. A team that is continuously trending in the wrong direction right now, the Golden Knights are kind of struggling. They've dropped 3 of their last 4. And I'm gonna ask you this question once we get to the other teams in this division that I had want to talk about. But Vegas right now, their lead's only 2 for that top of that Pacific division, and we talk about the 3 West Coast teams. They're only 7 points back. Is Vegas going to start to panic a little bit? Aiden Hill.
I don't know if you panic if you have 2 games in hand, though.
They have 2 games in hand on Edmonton. They don't have any games in hand.
Anaheim.
Yeah, no, they don't. Oh, yeah, they do. Yep. But the Sharks and Kings, I mean, they have 1 game in hand on Vegas, and I'm sure there's a lot more meetings between those teams in Vegas coming up towards the later part of the season.
But okay, Vegas is a good team. They just added Rasmus Anderson, reunites him with his old defensive partner. I feel like they're going to recover, but I also do feel like they have relied on that overtime loss point, because 25 regulation wins, 14 losses in regulation, and then 12 overtime / shootout losses. Yeah, okay. I can see everything and the whole look at the way you're looking at it, but unless Edmonton starts to put together a 5, 6, 8, 9, 10 game win streak, whatever it is, even if it's 5 games, and say Vegas is winning and just keeping that gap the same, all it takes is a couple of losses, and I've said this with the Utah-Dallas gap. This is a gap that could be closed realistically, because in division games, and let's say Edmonton they do win their games against Vegas for the rest of the year, that closes things up, and maybe they pull ahead because of it. Anaheim, and we're going to talk about Anaheim later, Chris, but Anaheim being 7-game win streak, they were getting dominated by Calgary last night for the first 2 periods and turned it on in the third. That's a team, if I'm Vegas, that's the team I watch. Edmonton's not the one I'm sold on.
That's where I was kind of going with that. Are you more nervous about any team behind you catching you for first place in the Pacific? And that's kind of where I was trying to head with that. I agree with you. I'm not really worried about Edmonton. I think Vegas and Edmonton are playoff teams, but are the Ducks, or honestly, the Sharks could even be a team where we talk about they could be in first place at some point in time if they keep winning games the way they are. And does that worry you if you're Vegas, that now you got to deal with Edmonton, and you got to face Draisaitl and McDavid in the first round of the playoffs, whereas before you were looking at maybe you got to face Utah or the Sharks, the Kings, something like that in the first round. Does that make you a little bit more nervous?
Yes and no, because if you're Vegas, if you fall into that second spot, you have to face Anaheim then, because it's the 2-3 matchup, whereas first gets the wild card matchup. But I'm almost going off of, if Vegas does finish first and they get the let's say the Utah matchup, that's also not there's no easy matchup in playoffs for any team with the way things sit right now. I also take a look at just how other teams are kind of playing, because say if San Jose somehow goes on a massive stretch, and again, speaking on hypotheticals here, if they go on said stretch, they could get in, and there's going to be a good team in a wildcard spot. There's already good teams in wildcard spots to begin with, but everybody is going off of seeding and trying to make the playoffs. Right now, LA's on the outside looking in. they're a really good team, and it's supposed to be Kopitar's last year. Chris, that's a storyline you and I are going to follow as things get closer to the playoffs. But getting back to that Anaheim kind of and Vegas point here, those are two teams. They are projected to be in playoffs. They're also like, I find both Vegas and Anaheim to be very streaky teams this year. When they're winning, they are exceptional, but when they're losing, they're in the mud and they're trying to fight their way out.
Vegas to me, and this is my final thought on Vegas, is I think they came into the season, and I said it on the preview podcast we did, and Vegas to me was hands down, looking at their lineup, the best team in hockey. They've dealt with their injuries all season. They're losing key pieces that, on paper, when you look at this roster, was okay. Yes, they're the best. Not having those pieces have hurt a little bit. They're still in first place, but then you look at they lost Aiden Hill, and that was a big loss for them. They went out, they added Carter Hart, expecting him to be a difference maker for this team as he came back. He struggled, and now Hill's back. He had a tough game last night. They lost 7-1 to Ottawa, and they kind of just looked lost. And
speaking of, did you see Mark Stone's comments after the game?
I did not.
It was like a men's league team, or no, it was like a professional team playing against a junior team.
Yeah, it was a big. I watched a little bit of that game. It was a big difference.
I caught the first period and a half, but it was quite a game Ottawa played.
Ottawa looked good last night in that game,
Yep.
but Akira Schmid, has come on and he's become kind of their guy in a way. And you have to wonder if this team wants to. To me, no matter what, I mean, we can have this. We can continue the conversation of where they finish, but this team in the playoffs, Akira Schmid has become their number one, kind of put his footprint on. This is my net. We're struggling in other places. Let's win games. I want to take over, and again, we'll have to see how that continues. They're a team. I'm pretty sure I said they were on the stretch of Utah and Dallas, and they got a tough week too with the Canadians in Dallas. I mean, so that's the thing is, can they turn this around, or do they feel Anaheim breathing down their neck to take first place from them?
Yeah, like it's a conversation I feel like it's going to be ongoing. And Chris, once you and I get into the more, like, I don't want to say the trenches of the end of the season, but once we see standings starting to take shape and there are confirmed eliminations and whatnot, we're going to be looking at who's still jockeying for first in their division, in the league, in their conference, and who's still on the outside looking in. I feel like Anaheim's going to thread that needle where they're going to go from Pacific number 3 to wild card 1 and then kind of balance their way through, and maybe they do end up in the second spot because they're red hot right now.
They are, and that's a team we're going to get to right now. They've won 7 straight, and they're at Edmonton tonight. And that a win tonight against Edmonton in regulation allows them to move from third to second, and they'll be 1 point back of the Golden Knights. This team, the Ducks team, we flip-flopped all year on. They went through that rough stretch. I think we talked about, and we were all in on them, and we said they got the leadership, they got Quenneville, they're going to be fine, they'll get back on track. Then they went through that tough losing stretch, and I think we sat here, both of us, and agreed, this is it. This is what we kind of expected from this team, and here it is. Here comes the free fall. Now they're back, and they're doing it with injuries. Like we talked about, this whole podcast could just be titled. This whole episode could just be titled "Injuries are changing everything." And like they've been without Leo Carlson. Chris Kreider was out for a little bit of time. They're missing some key pieces to their lineup, but they're not missing a beat as of late. And like Troy Terry's been out during this winning streak, and they're just finding different ways. Seneke last night with a hat trick, and you said it, I believe we were live for it, where the Flames were kind of just dog walking them in the first half of that game, and Seneke turned it on and came back and put the team on his back, and they came out and won. And they're just finding different ways to win. They're back to being that fun team. Can this team really And maybe we kind of covered it with the last conversation, but do we really think right now, number one, this team is a playoff team, but number two, can they win the Pacific?
I don't see them winning the Pacific because they've been in and out of that Pacific 3 spot. I do see them making the playoffs, and I've given a lot of my reasons why. But when they're hot, they're hot. When they're not, they're not. That's simply the way I'm gonna kind of say it. And wrapping it up quick here, Chris. When Anaheim, when they look like they are playing Quenneville's style of hockey, they're so good.
Mm-hmm.
Like half the game last night, I believe at one point the shots were 21-3, but it was like a 3-1 hockey game or something like that, or 2-1 hockey game. And like you don't see that every day. And they come back and they win. I was sitting in a bar in Winnipeg on Portage, and I watched the first 2 periods and got picked up and whatnot. Went home. Boom. I see the final and I'm like, whoa, what happened? So quite the team they have, and they rallied around that first goal, which was the massive difference maker. Because a lot of teams will go and they'll say, hey, you score one, okay, focus on getting the second, or okay, let's get the second goal. And having coached U15 at one point, Chris, like one of the big things is you look at guys and you see the difference in the mindset of these guys who are playing, or these kids, I guess, in the case of mine, for 1 year. But you see the mindset of guys who are focusing on making the play to get that next goal and help the team out and ride the momentum. And you see other people who are going and they're just saying, okay, let's hope we get another goal. And you're kind of seeing that shift because Beckett Seneke, he took control of the game last night. And I saw a lot of discourse of people saying, oh, maybe it was a good thing that Anaheim reached for him at 3rd overall. At the time, it could be seen as a reach, but now you can see it as, okay, Anaheim saw something that a lot of people didn't, and they made the right move.
They just keep piecing together that lineup, and I kind of stand with you. They're a playoff team. I think we're going to talk about them being in the playoffs and seeing what they have with physicality and the playoff atmosphere. Going back to first place, which they held for a good chunk of that start of the season, it's going to be tough because Vegas, even though they're struggling, you got to assume they'll figure it out. And Edmonton, I mean, who knows? That team can turn it on at any time. We've seen that. So it's a lot of fight. Wild card or 3rd in the Pacific, I agree with you. The playoff team, a team that is sitting outside of the playoffs right now, is kind of toying with their season. They've got points in 5 straight games. They're 2-0-3. They're been without their captain, Anze Kopitar, and the LA Kings. They've been without Kopitar for a little bit of time now. Is this a team that's just kind of scraping by, waiting for Kopitar to come back, and that will be what fixes them?
That's what it feels like. I've watched a few Kings games this year when it was a little bit easier, given the schedule I've had the last week here, Chris. Just watching some parts of their game, they play really good hockey when they're clicking, but there is so much out of their lineup that they usually have that it's affecting how they're approaching their game. Their depth is not an issue. They have the depth to support this. And when they do suffer losses from key veteran players like Kopitar and others, they have guys they can plug in to fill these roles. The issue becomes when you do move these depth guys up, you have to call up other guys to play in these 4th line roles, and that's where the issues kind of begin. You have guys who get exposed because they may not be used to that NHL forecheck and how teams really press. And Florida is a really good example of playing hard, a very hard, fast hitting hockey game. Detroit's developing that style. Colorado's dominated that style for years. LA's kind of getting caught against these teams at a crucial point of their season. Sure, they're tied in points with San Jose for the second wildcard spot, but one loss could derail things very quickly, and it's a day-to-day thing. And I know it's said when it comes to any profession, realistically, once you get down on yourself, it's hard, and it feels like LA's down on themselves right now. 21, 16, and 13 right now, and in their last 10 they're 4-2-4, so just not a very great stretch for the Kings at the moment.
The one thing I will say with this is I agree with you. They're just kind of treading water until Kopitar comes back, and they're hoping that's what takes them to the next level. But at the same time, he's already confirmed this is his last season. So if you like the Kings and you're a Kings fan, are you watching this and going, "This is what our future looks like"? After this season, like we're going to be one of those teams hovering for a playoff spot. It might even be worse than that unless you can make a move in the offseason. But this is a team that is gonna have a tough, because it's not confirmed when Kopitar's coming back. At least I haven't seen anything about it. That it's gonna be a little bit, and they're gonna have to figure out and turn the Jets on and start to win some games if they want to be a playoff team for their captain's final season.
Yeah, and it feels like teams that are teetering on the wild card scenario within the Western Conference, it's just you look up and down, you see teams that are performing better than last year, and other teams that they're starting to slip. And Chris, like LA's one of them, but Seattle, like there's they're taking a nosedive. They looked really good at one point, and it's not like that anymore.
Yeah, well, I mean, the Kraken, we talked about them a couple weeks ago. They were in the third in the Pacific, and I think we talked about, are they really a playoff team to you? And you kind of continued with me and said, no, they're not. Like, they're going to have that falling off point. Well, here we are. They've dropped 5 of their last 7. Is this it? Is this their season? They're falling off finally, and they're going to be a team we talk about maybe next week or after trade deadline selling off pieces.
Yeah, and I know, and if you listen to a lot of the big podcasts and all that, and a lot of Sportsnet panel, TSN panels, there's been a lot of discussions around Seattle and potentially moving Shane Wright.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of buzz at this point of the season, Chris, that kind of indicates where Seattle feels like they are at. I'm not saying anything specifically, but that's a good centerpiece to be dangling in this market right now, because there are teams that need a center and a guy who might come in. Say if he goes to Montreal or something, he's going to have a chip on his shoulder. And I'm just throwing Montreal out there, first team that comes to mind. But there's teams that need a second or even a third line center that can play a good forechecking style of hockey and is quick on his feet. And that's Shane Wright. Seattle as a team, it doesn't feel like they've had consistent seasons. And I say that because they had that playoff run a few years ago. And after that, they've been kind of contending in mediocrity, because when you look at the Seattle Kraken in their roster, they have a pretty decent roster. It's nothing that screams, okay, awesome, where do you go? But I look at where they are right now, and 23-19-9 on the season, 3-5-2 in their last 10, and I just grit my teeth. I don't know where you go if you're the Seattle Kraken, because you're right on the edge of you could make the playoffs and squeak in the wild card. But I said it earlier, one loss can derail everything.
And you kind of said it, like, you hear Shane Wright's name a lot in the last couple of days. And is that, obviously these are people saying it that are plugged in, so they know what's going on within the organization. So is Seattle seeing the game and going, yeah, this isn't the year that we're going to make that deep run. Maybe we sell off some pieces, get some pieces back, so in a couple of years they're making that deep run. With that being said, I'm going to go right to the last question that I had for you. And we had a quiet week. There was no movement this week other than some, like I said, when we started AHL trades. We had some big pieces moved. We're about, I believe the roster freezes February 4th. So we're about a week away, a little over a week away. Do we see one more big move in the next week? And what is the next big move, if so, you think we see?
I'm not convinced we see a big move coming up, Chris. I do think it'll be teams that are looking to either shake things up or maybe find a little bit more secondary kind of stuff in their scoring. I'm not going to allude to anyone specifically. I'm just going to put it like this, Chris. It does feel like it's shaping up that there's going to be a trade, but it doesn't feel like anything earth-shattering is going to happen before the Olympic freeze. I do feel like GMs are going to utilize that trade freeze to evaluate what they have and maybe add in that time, because there are going to be some really good players not selected to represent their country getting a great deal of rest over that time. And the price might go up just a little bit extra because they have that extra rest under their belt, and they could be pretty useful to teams that have multiple guys going to the Olympics. Cough, cough, Florida, Florida's made some pretty deep runs in the last 3 years. So teams might be willing to pay the price for having fresher bodies in the stretch run of the season. And with trade deadline coming up not too far after, it feels like once that trade freeze lifts, it feels like the dam's going to break.
My gut feeling right now is we're going to see something come in Monday or Tuesday of next week. And I think that's because you're going to see the next 3-4 games, the teams that are struggling, if they continue to struggle, are going to say, okay, we're going to sell off our pieces now. Or the teams that are winning, you're going to see them go on their hot stretch, continue it, and say, let's add now before this so we can start, maybe if they're not going to the Olympics, start getting those pieces built now, and we can figure out after the break, hey, we might still need this. And that completes your roster to make that deep run. So I think there's one big trade coming. As for who, I could not tell you. I want to say Dougie Hamilton is it because of all we've heard over the last couple of weeks, but that seemed to have quieted down.
I was going to say, and you just said it there, I don't see Hamilton being moved right now because of the Luke Hughes injury. And maybe it doesn't happen because of that injury, but
the other one is the other one's the one we just said was Shane Wright. So yeah. Those are the two that I said right away. That popped in my head right away. But to me, that Shane Wright being moved is all hinging on, I think, how they do this week, and that's why I say a team struggling, they lose 3 straight this week. All of a sudden, okay, maybe Shane Wright Monday and Tuesday is packing his bags and going somewhere else. But you and I'm sure we'll have a lot more to cover over the next week. And who knows, maybe Monday we're going live next week and we are breaking news. Never know with us. We are such a wild card. Thank you for tuning in this week. Everyone have a great week, and we will see you next week.
Yes, take care, everybody. Thank you for listening.